Hi, friends. Okay, so today we're going to jump right into Psycho-Cybernetics Maxwell Maltz. Chapter 7, You Can Acquire the Habit of Happiness. So he starts off the chapter with Dr. John A. Schindler's definition of happiness, which is a state of mind in which our thinking is pleasant a good share of the time. So most of the time, it's pleasant. Okay, happiness is native to the human mind and its physical machine. We think better, perform better, feel better, and are healthier when we are happy. Even our physical sense organs work better. And of course, you've always heard laughter is the best medicine and being happy and all those kinds of things. Then he runs through a bunch of examples. Russian psychologist, basically he showed that when people were thinking pleasant thoughts, they had better thoughts, they could see better, taste, smell, and hear better, and detect finer differences in touch. And then Dr. William Bates, eyesight improves when you're happier. Margaret Colbert has found memory is greatly improved when the mind is relaxed and when the subject is thinking pleasant thoughts. And so basically, he just starts quoting a bunch of things where they've shown that to be true. And then, let's see. Oh, and you'll hear this a lot too. The very word disease, okay, disease means a state of unhappiness or dis-ease. So you're going to hear that a lot when you start looking into some of this stuff. A recent survey showed that by large, optimistic, cheerful businessmen who looked on the bright side of things were more successful than pessimistic businessmen. And it appears that in our popular thinking about happiness, we have managed to get the cart before the horse. So we have it backwards in the way most of us think of happiness. Be good, we say, and you shall be happy. Or I would be happy, we say, if I could be successful and healthy. And it might be nearer to or be kind and loving to other people and you will be happy. So basically he says, it might be nearer to the truth if we said, be happy first, be happy, and you will be good, more successful, healthier, and feel and act more charitably towards others. So be happy first if you want all of those other things. Then he says common misconceptions about happiness. So happiness is not something that is earned or deserved. Happiness is not a moral issue any more than circulation of blood in the body is a moral issue. So happiness is simply a state of mind in which you are thinking pleasant and good, pleasant thoughts a good share of the time. If you wait until you deserve to be pleasant, if you wait until you deserve to think pleasant thoughts, you are likely to think unpleasant thoughts concerning your own unworthiness. So it goes back to deserving and worthiness again, even in this book from the 70s and obviously much further before that. Okay, so so the pursuit of happiness is not selfish. So this is where he's going to start debunking that it's a moral issue. So don't feel bad that you want to be happy is what he's going to get to. Many sincere people are deterred from seeking happiness because they feel that it would be selfish or wrong. Unselfishness does make for happiness, but it not only because it gets our minds directed away from ourselves and our introspection, our faults, our sins, our troubles, unpleasant thoughts, but or pride in our goodness, like being too self-righteous, but it also enables us to express ourselves creatively and fulfill ourselves in helping others. So you're going to hear this also, that you're here to help, you're here to find your mission, your passion, like your calling, and you're also here to help others. One of the most pleasant thoughts to any human being is the thought that he is needed, that he is important enough to help and to add happiness to some other being. However, if we make a moral issue out of happiness and conceive of it as something to be earned as a sort of reward for unselfishness, we are very apt to feel guilty about wanting happiness. And happiness comes from being and acting unselfishly as a natural accompaniment to the being and the acting. So when you're doing those things, that the happiness comes with it, not as a reward, but as part of the being and acting of it. So not as a payoff or a prize. If we are rewarded for being unselfish, the next logical step is to assume that the more self-abnegating and miserable we make ourselves, the more happy we will be. So that's when people say, oh, I shouldn't feel happy. So Maybe if I feel worse, then I'll feel happy. Like that's where he starts showing you the faulty, weird, crazy logic that we have. So the premise leads to the absurd conclusion that the way to be happy is to be unhappy. So do not think it's a moral issue. Do not feel bad about wanting to be happy, because quite honestly, we all want to be happy. If there's any moral issue, it's on the side of the happiness rather than the happiness. Okay. So then happiness does not lie in the future, but in the present. So then he quotes Pascal and he says, we are never living, but only hoping to live. And looking forward always to being happy is inevitably that we are never so. So this is pretty key right here. I have found that one of the commonmost causes of unhappiness among my patients is that they are attempting to live their lives on deferred payment plan. They do not live nor enjoy life now, but wait for some future event or occurrence. Okay, so I'll be happy when I get married, when I get a better job, when I have the house paid for, when I have the kids gone through college, when they've completed some task or won a victory. Like, I'll be happy then. And they defer it to the future. We don't want to do that. We want to find happiness now in the present moment. So invariably, they are disappointed. And then this is another key point. Happiness is a mental habit, a mental attitude, and if it is not learned and practiced in the present, it is never experienced. It cannot be made contingent upon solving some external problem. When one problem is solved, another appears in its place. So life is a series of problems, and if you're going to be happy at all, you must be happy, period. Like, you must decide and be happy, period. Not happy because of. So that's actually pretty key. I think we all can relate to that. Then he quotes Caliph Abraham Abdelrahman. Oh my goodness. Anyway, but basically this guy was super successful by most people's standards. He was a ruler, and he had victory and peace, and he had all these riches and honors. Anything he wanted, he could have. He had the respect of his advisors and the fear of his enemies. Like, he had everything. And he quoted himself and he said, in this situation, I have diligently numbered the days of pure and genuine happiness, which have fallen to my lot. They amount to 14. So 50 years of ruling really cool, really good, having everything you want, and 14 days of happiness. So don't think that just because somebody has the car and the awesome social media life and all these things and the house and whatever else, don't think that they are actually happy, because they might be missing the boat on all of that, okay? So never be jealous, start focusing on ourselves, start being happy here where we are now. Okay, most people are about as happy as they make their minds up to be. So that's a quote by Abraham Lincoln. And then he quotes Dr. Matthew N. Chappell, and he says, happiness is purely internal. It is produced not by objects, so not by things we buy, but by ideas, thoughts, and attitudes which can be developed and constructed by the individual's own activities, irrespective of the environment. So a lot of it can be mental, and we get to make the choices. But we can, by taking thought and making a simple decision, be happy and think pleasant thoughts a large share of the time regarding that multitude of events and circumstances of daily living which now make us unhappy. So we get to choose stuff that currently now make us unhappy and say, hey, I'm going to start changing this. To a large extent, we react to petty annoyances, frustrations, and the like, with grumpiness, dissatisfaction, resentment, and irritability purely out of habit. So, and I can totally relate to this. We have practiced reacting that way so long, it has become habitual. So you'll see something and you'll just habitually react to it rather than pausing first. Much of this habitual unhappiness reaction originated because some event which we interpreted as a blow to our self-esteem. So a lot of the stuff he says here, basically you start making choices and you start building new habits and being happy now. I was talking to a friend, and basically if you go back and look at what built your subconscious mind and your self-esteem and all these really core things, you're going to start finding events that happen and how you interpreted them that built templates for how you react to things going forward. So keep all of those things in mind, but just I'll rephrase this, or I'll say this again. We have practiced reacting that way so long it has become habitual. Much of this habitual unhappiness reaction originated because some event which we interpreted as a blow to our self-esteem. So like, and then he even says it could be anything. Like it could be a really traumatic event when you're a kid, or it could just be other little things during the day of someone honking their horn at them, or, you know, in traffic, someone interrupt you and not paying attention to when you're talking. Someone doesn't come through for us when we think they should. You might need to get new friends, you know, don't be afraid to cut off dead weight, but, you know, but we started, even impersonal events can be interpreted and reacted to as affronts to our self-esteem, right? So that we're going to start taking those things in and going, hey, this, you know, it's going to hit you inside. The bus we wanted to catch had to be late, and if the rain, you know, the rain came and messed up our golf day, and traffic, you know, got all snarled up when we had to go catch a plane, we react with anger, resentment, and self-pity, or in other words, unhappiness, rather than actually looking at what's happening and how am I reacting to it right now. Okay, stop letting things push you around. So this is pretty cool. He says, the best cure I have found for this sort of thing is to use unhappiness's own weapon, which is self-esteem. And then he says, so like TV shows, the master of ceremony, so the MC, and he shows up a sign and it says, tell to the audience, and he says, applause, and everybody starts clapping, right? And then he shows up another sign and it says laughter, and everybody goes, ha, 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 right? So, and so he says, these people, they're acting like sheep and as if they were slaves, and meekly react as they are told to react, okay? And you are acting the same way. This is key right here. You are acting the same way. You are letting outward events and other people dictate how you shall feel and how you shall react. You are acting as an obedient slave and obeying promptly when some event or circumstances signals you to be angry, to get upset, or now is the time to feel unhappy. So we are letting other things, other circumstances, other people, other events dictate how we're going to feel. And so he says, learning the happiness habit, you become a master instead of a slave. Or as Robert Louis Stevenson said, the habit of being happy enables one to be freed, or largely freed, from the dominion of outward conditions. Not worrying about what's going on and resolving to be happy and peaceful inside, making choices for yourself as opposed to what you're used to habitually reacting to and acting like. Okay, your opinion can add to unhappy events. This is pretty key too. We can usually manage to be happier by not adding to misfortune our own feelings of self-pity, resentment, and our own adverse opinions. So like this lady, she's a wife of an alcoholic, and she's like, how can I be happy? And he's like, well, I don't know, but you can be happier by resolving not to add resentment and self-pity to your misfortune. You know, like that's a hard one. You know, she married an alcoholic, but resentment and self-pity isn't going to help her feel happier, and she's going to have some hard choices to make. Then there's this other businessman, and he lost $200,000 in the stock market, and he says, I am ruined and disgraced. How can I be happy? And he says, you can be happier by not adding to your own opinion to the facts. So he's like, the fact is you lost $200,000. Your opinion is that you're ruined and disgraced. And I then suggested that he memorize a saying of Epictetus, oh my gosh, who was he was a Greek Stoic philosopher, okay, from 50 AD to 135 AD. We were classmates, him and I. Yeah, he's a cool dude. And actually, he was a slave at first too. Anyway, but Epictetus, I can't say his name today. He has a quote, and he says, "Men are disturbed," said the sage, "not by things that happen, but by their opinion of the things that happen." And I've seen that quote rewritten for like famous actors and all kinds of things. So, but it's not by what has happened, but their opinions of things that have happened. Okay, So when he basically, now back to Maxwell Maltz, when he said he wanted to be a doctor, a lot of people said he couldn't be, and his folks had no money. And in fact, the fact was his mom had no money, but he said it was only their opinion that I could never be a doctor. Okay. And then he later on he wanted to go to postgraduate courses in Germany, and that it was impossible for a young plastic surgeon to hang out his own shingle and go into business for himself in New York. And he says, I did all of these things because all of these impossibles were opinions, not facts. So separate our own opinions, separate other people's opinions from what are the hardcore facts. So these were facts, but I kept reminding myself that it was merely my opinion of this catastrophe, and that life was not worth living. And not only did I get over it, but it turned out to be one of the luckiest things that's ever happened to me. So he was basically saying some of the hard times he went through, but he's like, he got over it, and it was a good thing. In fact, he says it's some of the happiest times when he started looking back on life. Okay. And then it was pointed out earlier that man is a goal-striving being, and he is functioning naturally and normally when he is oriented towards some positive goal and striving towards some desirable goal. Okay, so $2,000. Thomas Edison lost a laboratory worth millions of dollars in a fire with no insurance, and someone asked him something, and he said, "We will start rebuilding tomorrow morning." And he maintained an aggressive attitude and was still goal-oriented despite his misfortune. Okay. And then he said, okay, so the $200,000 guy, the businessman who lost the money. So Dr. Maltz said, it's not that you lost the money, it's that you lost a goal and you've lost your aggressive attitude and was yielding passively, then reacting aggressively. So then the guy comes back later on and he says, I must have been crazy to let you convince me that losing my money was not what was making me unhappy, but I'm awfully glad you did. He stopped moaning about his misfortune, faced about, so turned around, got himself another goal and started working towards it. Within 5 years, he had more money than ever before in his life. And for the first time, he was in a business that he enjoyed. Okay. Psychologist H.L. Hollingworth said that happiness requires problems plus this is key. So happiness requires problems, but plus a mental attitude that is ready to meet distress with action towards a solution. Okay, so it's not the problems, but it's your mental preparation and acting towards that with a solution, not pity party, right? But like, okay, let's address this. Let's do this. We can do this. And then William James, there's like a long quote, but basically your thoughts, what you think makes something good or bad, makes something good or evil. And so he says, since you make them evil or good by your own thoughts about them, it is the ruling of your thoughts which proves to be your principal concern. So that's William James, The Varieties of Religious Experience, New York. It's a book, okay? So, and having a consuming desire to reach a goal and the persistence to keep him working towards it. Those are going to be key for all of us. But that was something that Maxwell Maltz was talking about for himself. He had a goal, he had a consuming desire. He was going to meet it no matter what, persistence, and he kept working towards it. Okay, so we have our first practice exercise. So here's our first homework. Form the habit of reacting aggressively and positively towards threats and problems. So react aggressively and positively. Don't pity party, don't mope. Form the habit of keeping goal-oriented all the time, regardless of what happens. Do this by practicing a positive, aggressive attitude, both in actual everyday situations which come up and also in your imagination. See yourself in your imagination taking positive, intelligent action towards solving a problem or reaching a goal. See yourself reacting to threats not by running away or evading them, but by meeting them, dealing with them, grappling with them in an aggressive and intelligent manner. Most people are brave only in the dangers to which they are accustomed themselves to, either in imagination or practice. And that was a quote by Bulwer Lytton, an English novelist. So basically, you're only going to be brave in the dangers that you're accustomed to. So if you don't keep growing and pushing yourself outside your boundaries, you're not going to get better at that, or anything actually. Okay, so systematically practice healthy mindedness. Okay, this is pretty good. This is big. Ralph Waldo Emerson, this is a quote. It says, "The measure of mental health is the disposition to find good everywhere." Okay, so there's always going to be something good to be thankful for. And you also hear that too, where people have like gratitude journals and writing something down every day, or a couple of things down every day of what you're grateful for, like clean air, or even your kitchen that you get to cook your food in, or you have a working refrigerator to keep everything nice and fresh in. Like things we take for granted. You start taking account of everything you're grateful for, and it starts adding up, and then you're like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. Okay, so the idea of happiness, or keeping one's thoughts pleasant most of the time, can be deliberately and systematically cultivated by practicing in a more or less cold-blooded manner. That strikes many of his patients as rather incredible, if not ludicrous, when he first suggests it. Yet, experience has shown that not only can this be done, but it's about the only way that the habit of happiness can be cultivated. So like just cold-blooded manner, like you're going to do this. In the first place, happiness isn't something that happens to you. It's something you yourself determine upon. If you wait for happiness to catch up with you, or just happen, or to be brought to you by others, you're likely going to have to wait a long while, okay? You're going to have a long time to wait. No one can decide what your thoughts shall be but yourself. If you wait for circumstances to justify your thinking pleasant thoughts, you're also going to wait for a long time, for forever, he says. So every day there's good and bad, and there are facts in the world, but you're going to choose whether you want to be grumpy or optimistic, depending upon your choice, okay? It's largely a matter of selection, attention, and decision. Okay, and it is merely a matter of to what we choose to give primary attention and what thoughts we hold in our mind. Okay, and then he has a couple of examples. This famous baseball pitcher, he heard a sermon, and it said basically the squirrel hoarding the chestnuts. We should store up as many moments of happiness and triumph so that in a crisis we can draw upon these memories for help and inspiration. And then Gene Tunney, he was going to have a fight with Jack Dempsey, and he realized that he was losing the battle in his mind already because he was listening all to the news and all the negative things. So he shut all that stuff out and just started focusing on himself and training and winning. And I simply had to close the doors of my mind to the destructive thoughts and divert my thinking to other things. Okay, so. And then he has this other guy, it's a salesman, and he wanted to get a nose job because he thought his nose was too big and that everyone was paying attention to his nose and no one was buying from him. And he just started having a sour attitude. And he suggested, so Dr. Maxwell Maltz suggested that this businessman performed surgery on his own thinking for 30 days. He was cut out all these negative thoughts, deliberately focused his attention upon pleasant thoughts, and it worked. Like he started getting, customers started reacting happier to see him, and he started making more sales, and his boss recommended him and noticed him in a meeting. Okay, and then there's Dr. Elwood Worcester in his book, Body, Mind, and Spirit. And that guy, Dr. Elwood Worcester, he found something that was written by William James, so that we've heard that name a lot. And basically it was directing of the attention to what is good and useful and ignoring the rest. So he's like, okay, I'm going to try this for 30 days. And so so whenever he had thoughts of the past, he would try to let his mind only dwell on happy, pleasant incidents and bright days of his past, okay? And then in thinking of the present, I would deliberately turn my attention to its desirable elements. So good things that he had in his current life, not anything that was lacking. And then thinking of the future, I determined to regard every worthy and possible ambition within my grasp. So everything he could think of, he said, yeah, I can get it, I can have it, it's mine. Now, ridiculous as it seemed at the time, in view of what has come to me since, I see that the only defect of my plan was that it was aimed too low and did not include enough. So basically, you gotta aim for the moon so that at least you fall with the stars. But he aimed too short and accomplished everything. But then he realized I should have aimed higher. So, okay. As I look back over all these changes, it seems to me that in some blind way, I stumbled on a path of life and set forces to work for me, which were working against me. Okay, and then now how an inventor used happy thoughts. So Professor Elmer Gates of Smithsonian Institute. So he made a daily practice of calling up pleasant ideas and memories and believed that this helped him with his work. Okay, so he would think of all these happy things, and he was known for like making a lot of inventions at the time, one of the most successful inventors at the time. So he said, if you keep doing it, kind of like working out at the gym, if you keep doing it over and over, it gets stronger, and you're going to find the change surprising, and alteration will be apparent in his actions and thoughts. Morally speaking, the man will become greatly improved image of his former self. Okay. How to learn the happiness habit. Okay, so there's a lot of key points in this one. Our self-image and our habits tend to go together. Self-image and habits go together. Key. This is huge. Change one and you will automatically change the other. The word habit originally meant a garment or clothing, and our habits are literally garments worn by our personalities. They are not accidental or happenstance. We have them because they fit us, okay? They are consistent with our self-image and our entire personality pattern. When we consciously and deliberately develop new and better habits, our self-image tends to outgrow the old habits and grow into a new pattern, all right? I can see many patients cringe when I mention changing habitual action patterns or acting out new behavior patterns until they become automatic. So he sees his patients cringe, and he says they confuse habit with addiction. An addiction is something you feel compelled to and which causes severe withdrawal symptoms. Treatment of addiction is beyond the scope of this book. So we're not talking about addictions. We're talking about habits that, because addictions have severe withdrawal symptoms. Okay, that's key. So habits, this is another big key here. Habits, on the other hand, are merely reactions and responses which we have learned to perform automatically without having to think or decide. They are performed by our creative mechanisms. So fully 95% of our behavior, feelings, and response is habitual. And again, a lot of that's going to come back to what you internalized and your self-esteem and situations that you were exposed to and how you thought you were going to cope with them, and then you just become a pattern. It can be your habit, okay? So in much the same way, our attitudes, emotions, and beliefs tend to become habitual. So our attitudes, emotions, and beliefs tend to become habitual. In the past, we have learned that certain attitudes, ways of feeling, and thinking were appropriate to certain situations. Now we tend to think and feel and act the same way whenever we encounter what we interpret as the same sort of situation. And it might not even be, but we're not looking at the facts, right? We're just like, oh, this is the same thing. I'm going to react the same thing, and it's automatic. Okay. And what we need to understand is that these habits, unlike addictions, can be modified, changed, or reversed simply by taking the trouble to make a conscious decision, and then by practicing or acting out the new response or behavior. So what's actually happening here? How did I used to react? You know, pause. How did I used to react? And it can be helpful for some of us to know why we used to react that way. But if you don't know why you reacted that way, or you're trying to just like cut to the chase and start here, what's happening in the environment? How would I usually react to this? Pause, and then make a conscious decision or practice in acting out the new response or behavior that you want to do. And it does require constant watchfulness and practice until the new behavior pattern is thoroughly learned, okay? So this is the ending practice exercise. This is our last homework. Habitually, you put on either your right shoe or your left shoe first. Habitually, you tie your shoes either by passing the right hand lace around or the left lace, whichever way you do it. Tomorrow morning, determine which shoe you put on first and how you tie your shoes. Now, consciously decide for the next 21 days you're going to form a new habit by putting the other shoe on and tying your laces in a different way. So just changing up your routine. We don't really wear shoes a lot here, but just find something that you do all the same way every day and change it. And then he says 21 days, but remember there was something else that we saw that was, I want to say John Assaraf, but it's like 40 or 60 something days. So don't be surprised with some of these really ingrained habits that it's going to take longer than 21 days, but just do it. Just do it. Okay, so you're going to change something. Now, each morning as you decide to put on your shoes in a certain manner, or whatever your new thing is that you're going to try, let this simple act serve as a reminder to change other habitual ways of thinking, acting, and feeling throughout that one day. Okay, I'm going to start changing. I'm going to start being more aware of how I'm automatically reacting to things. Say to yourself as you tie your shoes, I am beginning the day in a new and better way. And then consciously decide that throughout the day, so these are the things that you're going to have to think about throughout the day, and I'll just write them out below because it's a lot. But number 1, I will be as cheerful as possible. Number 2, I will try to feel and act a little more friendly towards other people. Number 3, I am going to be a little less critical and a little more tolerant of other people, their faults, failings, and mistakes. I will place the best possible interpretation upon their actions. So benefit of the doubt. Number 4, insofar as possible, I am going to act as if success were inevitable. I already am the sort of personality I want to be. I will practice acting like and feeling like this new personality. So like acting like and feeling like. Remember we told you, or we not told you, but we talked about the feeling is the secret, right? Because that emotion gets it into your subconscious, blah, 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 blah. Okay. 5, I will not let my own opinion color facts in a pessimistic or negative way. So if something happens, I'm not going to add to it by saying something negative. I'm just going to look at the facts, and then I'm going to try to get onto a positive solution as quickly as possible. Okay? And don't let anyone else's opinions color it badly either. Okay? Drown that out. Get rid of that noise. Number 6, I will practice smiling at least 3 times a day during the day. Okay. Number 7, regardless of what happens, I will react as calmly and intelligently as possible. So pause first, and then react as calmly and intelligently as possible so that you don't have the automatic habit reaction. Number 8, I will ignore completely and close my mind to all the pessimistic and negative facts which I can do nothing to change. And he has facts in quotations because basically pessimistic and negative facts are probably not really facts. And if you can't really change it, then just don't get sucked into it. Okay, so do it for 21 days and you're going to see a beneficial and constructive influence on your self-image, okay? So each of the habitual ways of acting, feeling, and thinking does have a beneficial and constructive influence on your self-image. Act it out for 21 days, experience them. So again, back to the feeling, experience them and see if worry, guilt, hostility has not been diminished and if confidence has not been increased. All right, so everyone have a super fantastic day and do something today that your future self will be thankful you did.